Hello dear followers and bodybuilding enthusiasts. Today I will tell you about three basic body types, so-called somatotypes. And based on this information you can maybe adjust your training routine and efforts in nutrition, supplementation, all the aspects of your trying to achieve your dream body. So it will be three somatotypes. I will describe them in more detail, each individually, and they are following. Skinny type, so-called ectomorphs. These people are quite lucky because they are usually of thinner bone construction, usually lighter people with very fast metabolism but very difficult situation with gaining muscular mass. They're usually inclined to have very steady and very slow results in body mass increasements, and that is because their bodies are not capable of building the protein blocks together, and their muscle fibers are a little bit unfortunate. Their composition is usually more favored to slow twitch fibers because they are small. It's very difficult to develop the rest, which is really missing. So these people are called ectomorphs. Usually, how would I describe? Very thin. They can eat as much as they like, and they still look skinny. In the gym, these people work really hard and don't have much results usually. But if you consider a few things and you really push hard, you can develop nice and impressive physique, even be an ectomorphic type. These people I would recommend to increase the intensity, try to get as much heavy lifting as possible, with a little bit more breaks in between your sets when you're in the gym. Please avoid all cardio training if possible, because you don't really need it. Your cardio will be always good just training. If you reach enough intensity, it will serve you as a good cardio as well. And if you work a little bit too much, you know, the periodicity, the frequency of your training should be a little bit milder. You need more time for rest, because if you train too much, you burn too much energy, and your body burns very quickly and dramatically. So if you don't eat enough, even if you try your hardest, you will never be where you want to be. So you have to be literally overeating all the time, consistently, and not only sometimes but all the time. So my recommendations are following. Calculate your metabolic rate, increase it by activity factor number. I will tell you in another video about it, and multiply this activity factor should be about 2.2, 2.4, let's say, and that will tell you how much energy you need to stay the same. So you even have to increase that number. So in reality it means that a very skinny person can eat so much that food is not enough itself, and you will need heavy supplementation, meaning protein powders, most of all, amino acids in whatever forms, keeping your inner environment in the best possible anabolic state, so BCAAs, glutamine, and all these. Alright, one more addition for ectomorphs. You don't have to be worried about fats at all, because you'll burn them very easily. To be honest, I don't almost know any ectomorphic type which would ever have problem with fat storage. So don't be worried about this. By the way, this is, it can be your advantage, because if you increase fats in your diet, it means that you will get a lot of energy at once from this source, and it will make all the other two, carbohydrates and protein, much easier to add to this complete sum and make it really a reality, eating about 4,000 or 5,000 calories I'm telling you about. So even for somebody of, let's say, 70-80 kilos body weight, depending on your height of course, it can be literally 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day it's a lot of calories. You know, personally, I don't even eat this. I don't even come close to this, even though I should. So this is something you don't have to be worried in your diet. Then about carbohydrates, you don't need to keep them too high, but you still need enough energy. You have to be able to, when you deplete your glycogen reserves, when you train, you have to be capable of restoring the levels from before. And so you just need enough for this, otherwise it's not really necessary to overload yourself with sugars, carbohydrates. You don't have to be worried what exact type of carbohydrates are you having, if it's lower or higher glycemic index carbohydrates, it doesn't matter. But certainly you will need enough protein, which is not unlimited. You shouldn't go over certain limits, which is usually 2 grams per 1 kilogram of your body weight a day. If you exceed this, you can maybe do this temporarily, but on longer run it should be kept a little bit lower, maybe even below. But if you calculate how much does it require for your body weight, it will mean that it's not too much in sense of energy. So if you have quite a few carbs, limited protein, it really needs to increase your fats. And fats can be good fats as well, so it's not the same if you eat chocolate or if you eat, let's say, avocados. It's really not the same. And so you should consider this, but increase your fats definitely. What's about the training? My recommendation is first to get good habits, because as ectomorphs don't have too much fat, sometimes fat is deposited in places where it's favorable, and that is in tendons, near the joints. That helps you to lift heavier with less risk of injury, and also it feels more comfortable. If you ever keep strict diet and you still lift heavy, and maybe you're not using any steroids, you will probably feel that it's a little bit difficult, and especially with ectomorphic types, doing certain level of intensities in terms of lifted weight and produced resistance. So I would be careful about the technique first, develop it, and then stick with the complex exercises. This is quite general for most people, but you shouldn't do it in too much quantity, because you don't want to burn too much energy, which then is difficult to restore from the food you're having. Okay, so now from the other side, so-called endomorphs. These people are quite opposite to what I just described before, and those were ectomorphs. Endomorphs are people with heavy bone construction. They usually have massive skull. Usually when you look at their joints, they're a little bit more massive than normally. They incline to keep more fat. They gain muscle quite easily. They are usually very strong people, but they have unfortunate slow metabolism. So they really have to be restrictive in terms of food in almost all aspects, mostly fats and carbohydrates. They really need to watch what they eat. So a few recommendations, let's say in terms of diet. So you have to keep under the limit, which is just for sustainable body weight. You need to be dieting almost all the time if you want to see visible results. Unlike ectomorphs, if they gain some first muscular mass, it usually looks really good straight away, because of the layer of fat is not shielding the results beneath. And endomorphs can have just as much results as them, but because they're covered in a layer of fat, and also there's a lot of intermuscular fat, they look soft. They don't look too muscular, and this is very desirable. So we do bodybuilding, we care about both mass and also levels of fat. So, and its distributions. So ectomorphic people should be kept under the limit which requires for sustaining their body weight. And to be fair, I'm very happy and lucky maybe at the same time that I'm not endomorphic now, because I would have to watch the diet, which is probably the hardest part of bodybuilding in general. These people will need to spend more energy when they train, but I will get to this a little bit later. First, still about food. The protein doesn't need to be as high, because the sources which protein is included in can be also quite rich in fats, you know. So when you eat meat, it has to be really lean meat. It means that you maybe eat a little bit less dairy products, not so much milk, maybe not at all. Cheese should be absolutely excluded, you know. It's really high in fats, even though bringing some protein, which you might enjoy. Endomorphic people, quite unfortunately to all this, have a good appetite, so they like food just like many other people, but for them it's a little bit destructive. So definitely keeping the fat levels very low. Carbohydrates, watch which carbohydrates you're eating. Really stick with potatoes, stick with maybe some good quality pasta. Rice cakes can be good, but you know, keep it within the limits. It doesn't mean that I tell you these things that well, okay, I can eat rice cakes, so I can eat unlimitedly, you know, many of them. No, you need to know how much energy are you taking and keep it. So basically, you will have to find this all your bodybuilding career if you want. What is related to training, you can train a little bit more frequently. You can train longer sessions, meaning training units, because you need to spend that energy. Also, I don't usually recommend it as much, but the cardio activity should be a little bit higher. There are training methods which could be quite desirable for endomorphic people, you know, body types, and that is, let's say, something called antagonistic supersets, which is maybe something which I should talk about in a separate video. Anyway, this is 2 sets of exercises following one after another with no break, and these muscle groups are opposing each other. So if you do one, you still have energy to do the other, but the heart is still going, you know, you're still producing the effort, so you're burning more energy, just distributing it, you know, to different body parts. So this can enhance your cardio activity, it can enhance burning, and still, you know, really doesn't, how would I say, you don't really need to just keep running all the time, every training, but it's also favorable if you do some activity like playing football, you know, like these people behind me, or if you just go for a jog. You can use fitness equipment in the gym. Well, you can do all the other sports if you want. Additionally to you know, gym sessions. The gym sessions should be a little bit more frequent than ectomorphs, which I told you before, and that is because you need to burn all that extra energy. This is literally opposite of ectomorphs. The choice of exercises, again, you know, you can be quite universal. You can train all body if you want, depending on your level. If you really want some really good bodybuilding results, of course, you will need to use splits to different trainings, training different muscle groups different days, having enough recovery, but doing it smart so that you can do it quite frequently. And on top of this, doing little extra cardio training should help you. Alright, so I already talked about ectomorphs and endomorphs. Now my favorite body type, which I also have, it's called mesomorph. Mesomorph is quite fortunate body type for most sports. People having this, they have a good combination of ability of gaining mass and also burning fat efficiently, and they usually have good given construction of bones, usually wider shoulders, narrower waistline and all this, so they usually incline to sports like athletics, gymnastics. But in sense, when I talk about athletics, I usually mean sprints, I don't know, javelin, you know, things like these, you know, where you need to apply some strength and speed, let's say. So these people are quite fortunate, as I said, because if they touch the weights, they will look good. They will have some solid size almost immediately. But if they go crazy about food, it's not like if you are ectomorphic type. You still need to watch a little bit what you're having if you really want to stay lean and if you want to see your gains in really good structure. So you know, the protein can, you know, stay quite high. What's about carbs? It has to be reasonable. If you have a little bit more, if you have a little bit extra, you can have it without feeling guilty that you had them. But you know, excessive abuse of carbs doesn't lead anywhere, and it will not make you any bigger or any harder, any skinnier if you want. And what about fats? I would just say just these sources which are usually occurred within the protein meals. So if you have, you can eat a lot of fish where you have a lot of good fats. It will give you energy, but it will not store in form of fat, most likely. You know, it's not absolutely that it would be the rule, but it will help you. So basically, if you're a mesomorphic type, and I mean men or women, it doesn't matter, you will just look good almost immediately. You shouldn't take these things for granted. It's a good start, but you have to treat it well. I always say that being fat is just as bad as being skinny and nothing, having no strength. And mesomorphic types, if they don't do anything about themselves, I think it's a little bit of sin not using your potential for a sport which you could be really good at. You could be inspirational to your surrounding and having good results for yourself. From the training perspective, the classic bodybuilding training will fit you really well. All those things which I told about endomorphs and ectomorphs apply here. If you really want to be a good bodybuilder, you have to use a split routine. Frequency of training can be a little bit more frequent than ectomorphs. It doesn't necessarily have to be every day. You don't need to do cardio almost at all. Maybe just in special cases, if you want to, let's say, go to a cutting phase where you prepare for a contest, or you want to look good in summer, whatever like this, whatever the reason. But you should always use what you have, and this is quite rich build up from intermediate and fast twitches. Because you have this, you will have really good response. Your strength will be increasing quite easily if you train right, and there are of course more variables to the training. I'm just talking about general things. You can also focus on details, because if you touch let's say more aimed exercises, more isolated ones, they will really do its job, because it will be visible on the muscle. You're not too fat to block the visual effect of it, and also you're capable of building that mass and turning them into the shape you want. So if you're mesomorphic type, you're very fortunate. Maybe at the end I would just add that every person is a combination of these three. In anthropology, they do measurements, so it really matters what is your bones construction like, what is your metabolism, what is the composition of fibers, and many other aspects, but these are the main ones. You are always the ratio of all those three. Most likely you will be dominant in one of them, so that will give you some good starting position if you know what to do to get the best out of what you have and avoid those things which could slow you down. Alright, so now I talked in general about human somatotypes, They're called like this, somatotypes, body types if you want. Now I would like to maybe pick a few things which differ men and women if I if I can do this. Men and women are very similar in many ways. Women usually tend to have slower metabolism because of the hormones. If they have more estrogen, less testosterone, they will store more fat quite easily, and because of this, all of those advices which I had before apply to women as well, but they have to be a little bit more careful about food. What about training? It depends what is your body weight and previous let's say sport experience, because if you don't have sport experience and you will just jump straight to this hardcore routine and you will follow it quite hard, maybe you are endomorphic type, which would be from my side seen as quite unfortunate, because these people, as I mentioned in one of the previous videos, are on the long run and results happen very slowly. So you have to persist, follow the goals, it will come. It's just a little bit longer than for, let's say, other people who can see results a little faster. But if you achieve it, if you manage to convert your muscle to a little higher level and burn more fat, it will mean that for future, I always say, muscle building is future fat gain prevention. So if you have more muscle, whatever you do in your life, if you sport and don't sport at all, if you just walk and sit around and do very easy activities, you will burn more fat just because you have more muscle. And women usually don't realize this too well, because they see muscles as something which is usually quite dominant in a man. Well, I would like to break these opinions in female heads, because you are really taking away the opportunity from yourself. If you realize this as something really important, muscle building for a woman is extremely important. It's just the same important as for a man. This is also something which makes you beautiful, which makes the shapes. You know, if you lose all your fat and beneath is skinny, ugly shaped physique, who cares? You know, who really cares? So I would say keep thinking about muscular development. That's something at first place. If you do this, hand in hand with that is fat burning, and you know, this is really what will constitute the shape what you desire. So another thing is that is general, so I'll keep it for later. Alright.